really excited to be here tonight for a special edition of our series called Design Is. We started this series back in April. The focus of the series is really about creating a space for the design community to explore and discuss the role of design in shaping the future, particularly as we start to develop and design for new technologies that have the potential to dramatically impact our lives, like VR and AR, as well as many others. So tonight we have with us a very talented crew of creators that we're really excited to have present their projects that are all focused on how to apply this technology for, as Meredith mentioned, positive impact in the world. So very excited to have them here. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Daniel, who is our curator, moderator, artist, designer, man of many, many talents that we are very excited to have. Thank you.
Hey, great, thanks. Wow, it's a lot of handoffs. It's nice to see you all here. Thank you all for coming, and of course to Google and to the Neue House for making this possible. This is a really funny story. It kind of is an impossible one. Kai came up to me a while back and she said, cool, so I'm just gonna make you asking him, I'm gonna ask you an impossible question. She said, what's design? And, I've been working in it for a while and I never think about that anymore. I just work, right? And I said, design is. Okay, well, design is. And so I dug deep back into the archives of the people that really got me going, the ones that I really helped me spring out into the world many, many moons ago. And one of them was this writer and philosopher named Willem Flusser. He writes a lot on technology. He's been around unfortunately passed away, but he was around for about 60 years writing in an incredible way. And he did something very interesting. He wrote one small book, which is a series of small essays called The Shape of Things. And in it, he really took on to design as a verb, not just the noun, but actually the verb. What does it mean to design? And he went to the etymology, dug deep into the Greek, and he extrapolated a bit. And he said, you know what? To design in Greek actually means to deceive. It means to fake you out. He said, it means to fake you out. In fact, it also means to simulate. And from there, we started to go a little bit further. And we said, well, to design is to simulate. How can we simulate now and also do what we believe to be good design, or what I like to call design, and we both do like to call design for good? So we selected an incredible group of folks who are doing that using the latest tools of arguably design, which is virtual reality, augmented reality, and different kinds of realities, many realities. And that's who you're just going to be seeing tonight. There's also a really nice group of projects here, works that you can visit. So I encourage you to check it out as well. Because we knew not everybody would be able to get time to see everything, they're going to be showing a little bit of background and history of their work, et cetera. But I do encourage you to explore the Neue House's generous use of their space to be able to experience these things and really start to dig in how design can actually simulate. So with that, I'd love to introduce the first speaker, and it's embarrassing, but I have to read it because it's a bio. So one moment, please. Our first speaker is Jess Engel. And Jess, of course, is the director of original content at Within, an immersive technology and media company whose mission is to help evolve VR into a new medium for experiential storytelling. At Within, Jess spearheads the development of original VR experiences with the top creators, music, film, animation, etc. Recently, she did Life of Us. It's an interactive shared VR experience in partnership with Anapara Pictures, Unity, and Pharrell Williams. And Hallelujah, based on Leonard Cohen's famous song, which was created using LightShed technology. Yes, that's the page turn. Very classy. Prior to joining Within, Jess was the executive producer at Virtualize and the creative executive at Electric City Entertainment, where she worked on critically acclaimed films such as Matt Ross's Captain Fantastic and Derek Cianfrance's The Place Beyond. Sorry, I murdered that last name. And Jess is a 2017 Sundance New Frontier mentor. So without further ado, Jess Engel. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here tonight. Thank you, first of all, to Google for hosting this event, for Neuhaus for having us here in this amazing space. Perlin, thank you for curating this great panel. And to everybody here in the audience, it's awesome that you guys are here and interested to hear what I'm going to talk about. So, designing virtual experiences with impact. So this is a logo of Within. It's our new logo. Within was formerly called Verse. It's a VR technology company and studio founded by Chris Milk and Aaron Koblin. Aaron actually worked at Google for many years, where he founded the data arts team in San Francisco. And he and Chris, who Chris comes from a directing background, they've collaborated on numerous projects that live at the intersection of music, art, and technology. So Within, our main business is that we're a platform for distribution, an app for distribution. And so we distribute all kinds of VR experiences across all the different VR platforms. So everything from iOS, Android, Gear, Daydream, Oculus 5, and PlayStation. We've distributed Gabo's pieces like Clouds Over Sidra. We recently distributed Winslow and Melitza's Giant. And so we also create content. So everything, mostly the type of content that we create in-house is pushing what storytelling and experiences can be in the space. So I put this little GIF in here because before I sort of dive into VR, I found this online and I really like it because it kind of breaks down 360 video and room scale virtual reality. 360 video is pre-rendered content. So everything that you would shoot with like a 360 camera, currently like live action work, a lot of documentary work. On the bottom here, you have room scale where you can actually like fully walk around. So like Tree, which is showing here tonight, that's a room scale experience. Clouds Over Sidra would be a 360 video. The experiences that we're showing here is the first one is called Valen's Reef. This was made with Conservation International. It was directed by Imran Esmail, who is a director, and produced by Here Be Dragons. This is one of the most popular pieces on our platform. And in terms of like designing VR experiences, I like to talk about this because people really like to be underwater in VR. And I think that it's important to think about, like, when you're designing an experience, you know, you want to take people places that they actually want to be. And especially when telling the story about coral reefs, you know, it's like, how can you bring people there instead of just looking at a photo or watching a movie where, you know, it's on a screen that's out in front of you. You can actually be immersed in the water looking at what's around you. So this is a project that we're super proud of. The next one that just recently came out is called The Protectors. This was co-directed by Catherine Bigelow and also Imran Esmail. And this was shot in Africa. It basically goes into what's happening with elephants, and every 15 minutes an elephant is killed. And, you know, the idea that elephants can go extinct is actually in our reality, especially with what's happening with, you know, ivory poaching. So it's a really powerful film, and it premiered at Tribeca. Hillary Clinton actually came to the premiere and spoke about it. And again, I think, you know, when you talk about designing for good, it's like with VR, you're not just looking at it passively, but you're actually inside the experience, fully immersed in what's happening. And there's this really powerful image where a recently killed elephant is right in front of you. And so you're actually seeing what these rangers are seeing every day as they're fighting to protect the elephants. I'm about to show a trailer to Life of Us. Life of Us it's not a VR for good project, but in terms of design, I think it's really important to talk about. It's a fully interactive game engine CG experience that you can actually do with somebody else. So it's a social VR experience, and it's an evolutionary journey where you start off as an amoeba and you evolve into a tadpole and then a lizard, and you kind of go through these stages of evolution with somebody. So I'm going to play a trailer. The experience actually just recently opened at IMAX, and then I'll kind of go into some of the design learnings that came from this. And this was co-created by Chris Milk and Aaron Koblin. This is a water bear. We took creative liberties. those monkeys that come on your back. Oh my god. All right, so Life of Us. I like this quote. It's from Aaron. He says, "We started off by doing some multiplayer demos where we just had cubes for hands and heads, and we would be able to just talk to each other in a shared space. And what we immediately saw was you don't actually need photorealism when it's a real person on the other end. You actually have the humanity pouring out of this abstraction." So I think it's a really interesting thing to think about when you're designing in a simulated environment, that even if the person on the other side of it, it's not a photoreal person, but if you're looking at a CG animated character, if it's a representation of a person on the other end of it, you feel that humanity in there. And one of the biggest things about this project is that it's a shared VR experience. Some of our learnings, like shared experiences in VR, create shared experiences outside of it. So people who'd never met before, they go into the experience together, and there was a couple that met while doing that experience, and so you actually are creating memories within that. Sound is incredibly powerful. Everything from the subconscious emotional effects of music to the power of hearing your voice, your friend's voice, and having your voice transform. So voice is super important in this as well. Like when you're an amoeba or a tadpole, your voice is super high pitched, and then it evolves as you become, because that's obviously how amoebas sound. And then when you become a lizard or an ape or a pterodactyl, your voice is like this Barry Manilow vibe. It's great. And it's really fun. And play into your constraints. So it's it's less about the photoreal environments and more about tapping into the imagination, setting the world and expectations, and then what you can do inside that world. And then don't underestimate the value of play and discovery. I think especially with design and designing for good, and if it's about nature, like allow yourself to be in nature. I think that's one of the things I love about Tree, where you become a tree and you're kind of growing, and at one point you're like, it's really nice to be a tree right now. You hear the birds chirping, and so it's like designing to that play. It's about play and discovery as well. And then upcoming impact projects, I can't get into too many specifics, but we're working on documentary series, and then the focus on education and science and nature. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. I've never thought about how tadpoles talk until right now. It's really exciting. So, yes. Who's next? Let me see. All right, I'll tell you. Oh, yeah. Peter. So, we can talk about Peter for a second. So, as you can tell, this is a close-knit community in the VR world as well, and we all know each other, but I'm sure none of us have actually read each other's bios. So this is going to be really exciting for them to check out. But Peter Flaherty is a director and interactive artist whose work has shown in over 100 international venues, theaters, galleries, museums, etc. He created and directed Surrogate, which is featured here. It's a virtual reality narrative experience that melds 360 video with a computer-generated explorable environment. He was at South by Southwest Interactive Innovation Award finalist. He's now expanding the Surrogate as a hybrid VR and TV series with a major TV network. He created a 5-hour video projection for the Parsifal at the Metropolitan Opera, or Parsifal, I think, right? Yes, well, thank you. Yeah. Of the Flying Dutchman in 2020, and he's received grants from Rockefeller, Map Fund, New York State Council of the Arts, etc. He's the Doris Duke Foundation as well, and the Jerome Foundation. He's a professor and the head of interactive media and performance at the MFA program at Cal Arts. And I think that's actually very inspirational for a lot of us to think about how this can be extended outwards. And so without any further ado, Peter Flaherty is going to talk a bit.
Thanks, Daniel. So thanks very much. Exciting to be here. Thanks to all of you for having us, Google and Noia House. like Daniel said, I have an immersive art and theater background. So I've done a lot of video installations for galleries and museums and some performance work for large-scale touring theatrical productions, which sort of feel more like a film exploded all over a stage than a theater play. So you can kind of remove the play from your mind. And I'll show you a couple of very quick examples of what that work that influenced my development as a creator looks like, just so that you have a picture to replace that horrible image of like an actor doing like a really horrible production of 12th Night or whatever your worst fifth grade field trip memory is. One production I'm just going to highlight really quickly is called Supervision. And one of the reasons I want to talk about a couple of these first productions is that the process of making them is also unique. They involve a certain amount of ethnographic study and research in developing the actual script and production itself. So it's always about a topical, modern issue of some kind. And so Supervision, I developed with the Builders Association out of New York, with whom I worked for a long time. And it's about the idea of the data body. And it's about the idea of data valence, and essentially the data body starting to take primacy over the physical body, that we're able to be tracked by our data more effectively than our real body, that we're able to be monitored, categorized, and otherwise surveilled through data valence as opposed to surveillance. So it looks like this. This show toured for about a year and a half. I think it toured to like 12 or 15 different cities around the world. And as you can see, it's live actors, but a lot of video and a whole bunch of technicians that are visible in the front. And the actors are actually surrounded by video screens. The stage is only about 6 feet deep and it's about 35 feet long. And the whole thing is framed by an aperture that's meant to mimic a film. So this is another view of the same thing. And so the actors themselves are sandwiched between a rear projection screen and a front projection screen. So it makes them part of the film in a sense. So I started making this stuff in like 2000. And so this was my first introduction to immersive media, was figuring out how to physically surround you with media rather than putting it on your face. So another project I did that I think has a sort of similar tone in terms of process and development is called Pass Back a Revolver. This is in the art context. So this was shown at the Institute of Contemporary Art in Philadelphia. And it was based on ethnographic research that I did along with a partner, Pablo Colapinto, along the US-Mexican border. We spent about a month sort of flip-flopping between the Mexican and US side, town to town to town to town, and we would embed ourselves. We were embedded with the Minutemen for a while, who, if you remember them, they're sort of the border vigilantes. Really scary. Observing a labor center from the abandoned parking lot of a remote control derby park, like a roller skating rink that had been repurposed into a remote control car racing track. It was wild. Binoculars, writing down license plates. It was scary. But we would go back and forth between charity organizations on the Mexican side, back to the US, and boom, 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 boom. And so this was all based on that documentary research. And what we presented in the museum was a documentary film coupled with a video installation that was inside of this 30-foot tall glass atrium that was the building in downtown Philadelphia. And so you create this other production. We had little resonator speakers on the glass, making the glass itself into a gigantic speaker that was able to create spatialized audio that tracked people who moved through the city. So we created this piece based on that research and the people we met and the stories we found. And then from that, this piece emerged. So now we're going to get to part 2, which is the surrogate, which is the project I'm showing here. And the reason I mention all of that beforehand is that I think it's really interesting to consider from both a design and creative standpoint how, why, and who is creating these new experiences in VR, AR, and other mixed media and layered realities. We have all kinds of different people. We have filmmakers, we have theater practitioners, we have coders, we have people who come from game design. The list goes on and on and on. And I think sometimes the simple assumption that because many of these forms aggregate in video on a screen in front of our face, that filmmaking is the natural analogy, I think that's false. I think that that's part of it, certainly. I'm not ruling it out in any way, but I think you have to look at the ecosystem more broadly. So when I was looking at the VR landscape, the surrogate emerged because I was looking to make a production that achieved the goal of presence in VR by accomplishing two simple things, which was immersion, visible, physical, auditory, emotional, and also giving your viewer, the participant, agency, the ability to move themselves through the story or be an agent of some kind of change or influence on the story itself. So for me, what that meant is I wanted depth of emotion, narrative, I wanted live actors somehow, and I wanted an environment you could move around in. And I wanted all of that, and then I wanted a really modern story that felt like it was compelling in our time and also felt like it was native to the medium of VR, that it could not be told in any other medium, that it was only meant for this. And so that's how I arrived eventually at the surrogate. And it was a combination of design and also narrative influencing each other to arrive at the final outcome. I am going to now play a video for those of you who didn't get to see it today that will give you a sense of what the surrogate is like. Here's an image from the surrogate. That's one of our lead actors, Olga Fedori, who plays the surrogate.
The Surrogate is a narrative virtual reality experience that melds 360 video and a computer-generated explorable environment using an innovative technique called immersive hemispheres. When the viewer puts on the VR headset, they are immersed in the consciousness of a female protagonist whose point of view they control as they explore the passageways that snake behind the walls of a modern house. The viewer experiences the ensuing narrative by moving through these passageways autonomously, deciding how they follow the action and which rooms they look into at any given time.
It dates itself. You can see the DK2 in that trailer. So that is the surrogate. And so to pick up on where I left off, something that's really important is that this is a story world where one of the primary characters is suffering from a disorder that emerges from this new technology. And the disorder itself was something that was inspired by conversations I had with many psychiatrists and a behavioral therapist, talking about how we could imagine what this new technology of augmented and virtual reality would start to do to us psychologically, in much the same way that the iPhone has changed our posture and our fine motor skills and our gestures and our interpersonal behavior. You project yourself forward into the future, and I think you can imagine that the AR and VR are going to have profound effects on how we behave and how our relationships evolve. And so for me, I wanted to make a love story in the context of this scenario. And so I wanted to find a way to mix these live action portals together with the explorable environment. And I created this story about how people sometimes suffer from these disorders that were based on anxiety, PTSD, borderline personality, very real disorders, and might have to replace themselves in their physical life with a surrogate human. And as I spoke to the psychiatrists and talked to them about the disorders, they suggested those disorders I just mentioned. And I said, look, but could this really happen? And they said, well, we don't call it layered reality disorder yet, but this is already happening. This is already what we're diagnosing every day. We're diagnosing misunderstandings via text message. We're diagnosing people who have anxiety because of likes on social media. This is already here. You just don't call it that. You don't call it this, and you're not living in the future looking back at it to be able to confirm it yet, but it's already here. The story itself sort of evolved from there, and the technology and the story eventually met in this piece. I hope some of you who haven't had a chance to see it might get a chance to see it later tonight. My research with the surrogate led me to one project that I'm now working on in the future, which is, it led me to something called EMDR, which is a therapy that's designed to reprogram traumatic memories. And it uses simple gestural impulses like moving your eyes horizontally whilst thinking about certain aspects of the memory. It can use auditory and other visual signals. And so I've started working very early stages, but trying to take some of that learning from surrogate and trying to take it and import it into VR and AR so that we can create an ecosystem where Those innovations are not only creating entertainment and awareness, which I'm hoping the project I've already made is doing some of, but also so that we can start moving it into the realm of therapy. And so that we are not only working with the media responsibly, but we're also looking ahead to our future and trying to solve some of the future problems the media itself and the technology itself may end up provoking. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Very nice. Gabo Arora is an award-winning filmmaker and founder and creator director of LightShed, a virtual reality and social impact startup. Formerly, he was a senior policy advisor at the UN's first ever creative director. He has directed, produced a series of widely acclaimed virtual reality documentaries. Notably here, we're featuring Clouds Over Sidra, Waves Grace, My Mother's Wing, amongst others. Those are for the United Nations and have all premiered at places like Cannes, Sundance, Tribeca, etc. In addition, they've also been featured at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. And they've been screened at the White House and have been exhibited in the museum at MoMA, and inaugural program in immersive storytelling. His work has been nominated for an Emmy and awarded a Cannes Lion. Gabo is currently an advisor to numerous UN agencies, NGOs, and the private sector on the use of immersive tech to promote social causes. His latest VR experience, which premiered recently, The Last Goodbye, was commissioned by Steven Spielberg's Shoah Foundation, and it premiered at Tribeca Film Festival most recently. So without any more speaking, Gabo Arora.
Great. Can you restart the timer? I want all my time. The bio was 10 minutes.
I know, sorry, man.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me here. And I put this together really quickly from a much bigger presentation because I'm used to speaking for more than 10 minutes, but it's okay. And some of it's gonna like click. And I'm very bad with technology, ironically. But so the project that we have here is Clouds Over Sidra, and it's the UN's first virtual reality documentary. And I did it within the context of trying to create not only impact for the world with these stories that are very important, but also to kind of change the way the UN approaches these types of stories and how we try to get people to care internally about how these things work. So generally, I put this up because whenever we want to get people to care, we call these guys. And the work that I tried to do is not about those guys, and I don't want those guys. I don't need them, even though I'm in LA. And so, you know, just to give you a bit of a context, if you go to the UN's YouTube channel, for the most important topics and organization of our time, if you look at some of the hit counters, you can do this on your own. It's really abysmal. And I kind of see VR as an opportunity where it kind of, you know, we might have not gotten this right totally, but VR was able to kind of leapfrog and to have a bit of impact that I always wished we were able to have with our regular digital media, and maybe do some things in a new way. So it's kind of like, you know, with when people talk about mobile phones in, like, you know, the African continent or in Asia, like they didn't have certain infrastructures, but new technologies allowed them to kind of leapfrog. I think VR has this incredible ability to get people to actually care about our topics. The empathy machine, you probably remember that a bit. Clouds Over Sidra is a result of me going to a party and meeting Chris Milk, and then becoming very good friends with him, and coming together to think, you know, how do we use virtual reality to really have it be more than just about gaming and, you know, entertainment. And so when I met Chris in 2014, through that collaboration, that Clouds Over Sidra happened, where I met Chris, and a month later, he gave me a camera, a very early stage GoPro rig that I went with Barry Pausman, my DP, to make Clouds Over Sidra. And if you haven't seen it, the his TED Talk on the empathy machine features this project as well. So Clouds Over Sidra debuted at Davos at the World Economic Forum. And the initial sort of idea was to impact a lot of decision makers that would do it. That bottom quote, by the way, is a true quote. I put it there because it's on Waves of Grace, and I swear to God it's true. And I was waiting for my New Yorker debut, and I just wanted to have the New Yorker, and I need to have that quote just so you're impressed. This is some, if you haven't seen it, I put the audio in there because I think so much of the emotion of a lot of the work that we do has to do with, you know, the kind of sound design that comes with it. And this doesn't have the voiceover with Sidra, but it's basically an experience of a 12-year-old girl who gives you a tour of the camp and of where she's staying and her longing for her home. And in designing it, you know, I didn't know what to do. I just knew we couldn't move the camera. We had to think about having things around you. And so, you know, these are some of the scenes that I think work particularly well with camera height and angles. So there's a little bit, if you haven't seen it, you can watch it here. I actually rewatched it before this talk, and it was like, it's been 2.5 years, and it still kind of blows me away. So, you know, I think a lot of the talk about VR being an empathy machine, a lot of it was generated from the work on this piece. And I just think it's important to think about what we mean by empathy and what we mean by certain words. So I kind of sat down and just tried to think about what I felt it was doing. And, you know, I think it's important when you go forward to kind of think, you know, what are some of your own definitions of what you're trying to generate? This is one that I just want to show a bit, where after showing it to decision makers, we said, the UN was like, that's great, you made a movie in a headset that no one could watch. And back then there were no headsets and there was no Google. It was just like, I actually at one point had the greatest number of Samsung Gear headsets in the world. They gave me 150 in late 2014. And we were just sending it around to, you know, all these like, you know, dignitaries that would see it, and it was blowing people's minds, and we were doing all that stuff. But at some point, I needed to take it to scale. And the UN and UNICEF in particular has one of their largest sources of revenue is face-to-face fundraisers. Those annoying people like with clipboards who stop you from money. But it actually makes a lot of money. And they're in 40 different countries in 15 different languages. So we're like, okay, let's pilot this. And we chose New Zealand. Don't ask me why. I mean, it just kind of happens. And we said, let's start outfitting people with a cheaper VR headset. I cut a 4-minute version of Clouds Over Sidra. And the idea was that we had statistics of how much people give without VR, and we could very easily build these control studies and try to see if this was making a difference. But before we did that, these were the young people who often work at very low rates, or volunteers or students who were stopping people on the streets. And they sent me this video from New Zealand after they watched Clouds Over Sidra, when I said, you know, something's happening here.
The girl in the video was only like a few years younger than me, and the boys running around were my brother's age.
It gave me a real sense of appreciation for what I've got here.
I felt as if I was actually there, and I could actually feel the pain of the children and their suffering.
Made the people seem so alive, and I think that's really important with this. The people have to be alive in order for change to happen.
It was something that I don't want to believe is happening, but I can't ignore it anymore.
I knew about what was going on, but I didn't really know the extent of everything that happened there.
Open one arm and then the other, and then walk towards a person and then hug them.
Why are basic human rights still being denied in the 21st century? Why are there still people falling dead on the streets? Why do humans feel the need for war?
My sorrow is one based on, me coming to school when it's raining. For them, it's not even being able to go to school.
Yeah, it really makes you feel for what's happening in that situation.
They said that it will kind of pass, like the clouds, and I thought that was really inspiring.
How they can just find happiness in a place where
there's not going to be much.
These were other girls like me going through it and actually thinking and feeling how they are feeling.
At this point, I said, all right, like these were people who were using it, because then they were using it to then put it on other people, and it was leading to this incredible response. And so we also then used it with face-to-face fundraisers, but and then we also have something called the Cedra Project, which we piloted in Canada, which was we can use it for raising money, and we can also use it for resettled refugees coming into Canada and host communities, and it's being used in that sort of context, so it can kind of counter some of the xenophobia that's on the rise all over the world. So this is how it looks like when they started. So my order's up. This is what it looks like to give you a sense of how they stop people. So the statistics on the fundraising part is usually 1 in 12 people will give. If you don't have VR, if you have VR, 1 in 6 people are giving. And we're getting this consistently in 40 different countries. I should just drop my mic. Right? That's like mic drop. Done. Impact. It's really exciting. What it's led to is a kind of empathy arms race of like every NGO trying to now build their VR experience to then raise money. And but I have to remind people that it's not just VR. It's also a pretty damn good film, people, right? And so it's like a constant battle of them just thinking, I'll just do some schmoey, VR film, and we're gonna double donations. And they don't, because they didn't call me. I'm not bitter. Impact also, I think, is more than just money. My Mother's Wing, which is a film I'm very proud of that premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival a year ago, is about a mother in Gaza. And I spent a week in Gaza making it, and it's a really profound experience and very difficult film to do. And we world premiered it in Tel Aviv, at Tel Aviv University, and we showed it on the streets of Israel, and we did questionnaires to test people's baseline knowledge about what they thought about the conflict. It was very, edgy, but very interesting to form a conversation, and actually very well received. And I think we have a behind the scenes on that we're building to really get people to realize that, people care everywhere, and these things can also work. And it's you can also watch this on the Within app. So I'm good with time. This is a 1-minute video. We're gonna play it. As Jess was saying, most of my other stuff is 360. This is a walk-around VR experience that's on a Holocaust survivor, and it just gives you a good sense of where we're taking the medium and designing it now, not just for looking around, but for walking around. It's just like a quick video. I make virtual reality films in 360 degrees, stuff you can watch in a headset. My other films have been on pretty big, serious social issues, like the refugee crisis, the Ebola crisis. Most of my films up until now, they bring you into another world, but it's not a world you can necessarily walk around. And this project is, really pushing the boundaries of what it means to be in virtual reality. I really felt this type of technology would be really powerful for genocide survivors. There's this need for testimony. There's this need to share. There's this need to educate, but also to bring you there and to have them take you there. Pincus was one of the few people to survive this camp. I mean, today we film in the shower room that he was brought when he was 11 years old on the day that the rest of his family members were killed. And in the experience, you're going to be in the shower room with him. Up until now, if you need to move around in virtual reality, they're usually computer-generated images. This project gave us the possibility to explore with some cutting-edge technology what it would be like to be in a certain place, but also with someone else who would be able to be your guide. You are able to be confined to a certain space, and with a headset, you can explore that space, and it really is hacking your senses. You know, I think these types of experiences, they will give a different type of feeling that one doesn't get in traditional documentary or traditional film. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabo. Our next presenter is Anshuman Kumar. Anshuman has a background in design. He started his career as an architect, crafting spaces wrapped by concrete and glass. But then he got smitten by the ability of technology to adapt and evolve with the ever-changing fabric of the society and human life. He started designing digital experiences, worked really talented designers and artists to build some amazing products from ranging from Yahoo Mail, Google Apps for Work, self-driving cars, Daydream VR, which a lot of these pieces are being displayed on, and now augmented reality experiences. For the last year, he's been busy defining and shaping Google's AR vision and their products. So please welcome Anshuman.
Thank you. Hey, hi everyone. Two things. One, can we have like a round of applause for everyone who has been demoing today? Like all the artists and the crew, like they have been doing an amazing job. And if you have not gotten a chance to kind of check them out, please go and check them out. They're amazing demos. Second thing, I don't have anything against gaming. They're awesome people who make games. They're cool people who actually play them. But I'm more interested in designing and solving real-world problems. And that's why I'm going to be focusing this talk on an app that the Daydream team has been building for the last 1.5 years, and it's called Expedition. And I guess some of you got a chance to play around with it. But before I go into it, I want to kind of tell you a little more about myself. So growing up, I always hated chemistry. And my biggest enemy was carbon. I still don't know if it has extra 4 electrons or protons, but it's messed up. Like it could form compounds with every other element. The way it was described, it was like so cryptic. Like in this way, when I look at it, it's like, you know, like all the free protons and electrons inside. Okay, first, let's kind of bottom align ourselves, like on the same plane. Okay, all the electrons and protons are on the same plane. Now it's kind of bond together. And then there's oxygen who said, wait, I have to form 2 bonds. We can't form it on the same plane. I need a third plane. And you're like, oh shit, oh, okay. Why don't you do an extra line over there? You know, let people understand it. So I hated chemistry. But I really loved history because of arts, culture, and architecture. But I always felt at school that, you know, I learned about these things, but I never really like know them. I never got a chance to know them. And these things were like, it was difficult for me to kind of even feel the need for this, but I always felt there was something missing. Fast forward almost 2 decades, and 2016, I got a chance to kind of work with the Expedition team. And this was a dream come true for me because Expedition team at that point of time was trying to use VR to change the nature of education, how it happens in school. So for me, it was like, wait, I face these problems and now I'm getting this chance to kind of design solutions that can actually change education in the classroom. So I have a small video to kind of show you and to kind of give you a peek into how the nature of a classroom changes when we introduce a medium like VR for education.
You could pick anywhere in the world that you want to go. Where would you want to go?
I would like to go to the moon. Thailand, ancient Greece.
India. To Nigeria, my homeland.
One or maybe all of the 7 wonders of the world. When they explore different places, you have the chance to actually learn something new.
You want to be able to show the kids that there's something outside of your community that you could go to and learn from, and that there's other places you can visit.
All right, so let's do our objective and we'll talk about the lesson for today.
We're gonna take a field trip to Verona, Italy to see the place where Romeo and Juliet lived.
I'm going to take you on this field trip under the water. Okay, you guys ready? Pick up your devices.
And look in your cardboard.
What is that?
I see a shark.
It allowed us to go somewhere we wouldn't normally be able to go.
Are we in China?
This is the Great Wall of China.
We got to see the place itself so we could actually understand what she was talking about.
How long would it take to walk the length of the Great Wall of China?
So much more enriching than just showing them a picture or just having them read about it.
This device can actually make us go to places that we've never been before.
It brings the lesson to you.
You have to see it for yourself to believe it.
There's so much other places to see, so you know that it's never gonna end.
This is a cool video, but still doesn't do a good job in capturing the energy of a classroom. And I've been fortunate to be in some of these classrooms, and just being there and witnessing how education happens, I learned three things. One, that we feel that VR is isolating, like, get in this zone and like you're in your own world. But just by the nature of like the kind of headset we're using, something without a strap. So you just kind of put this on and you experience something like, whoa, check this out, this is so cool. And suddenly that whole environment becomes a social environment. You see something and the kid is ready to kind of share that experience. And that sharing that happens at that moment is the most powerful virtue which we feel. Second thing which we learned over here was that once a kid has actually seen something visually, has been somewhere, they would tend to kind of remember those things way longer than if they would have just read it in a textbook. And the third thing that I learned the hard way was kids are the worst and they're the most brutal when it comes to design critique. Oh man. The kind of feedback we got from them and the critique we got from them, it definitely helped us improve our product, but it was definitely demotivating. So when we started Expedition, it was all about, we'll go to road trips to these amazing places in the world. But very soon we realized, wait, we are selling this technology shot. And then we started thinking about how well we can extend this. And we started focusing on topics and themes, which might be a little sensitive, but very pertinent to our current society, like climate change, like cultural differences. Like this example is an example where coral bleaching that was happening around the Hawaiian Islands. And this was such a pertinent topic. And so this is actually a teacher's view. They kind of control it from their own device. They see a 2D view. But the kids actually see the whole thing in VR. And not having a presence of any life in that space is so dreadful. So when they start this experience, they're super excited. And within a few seconds, everything kind of goes quiet. And the moment they put on their headset, they're like, you can see the change in their reaction. They are much more thoughtful, quiet, and sometimes angry. And so this, it was powerful, this whole concept. So actually, that's Michael. He's actually a teacher, and he was actually teaching this particular lesson in a school in New Jersey. And his comment about that, he has been teaching this lesson for numerous years, and not years, but sessions. And he mentioned that this experience added a layer of authenticity to that topic, and just being there for the kids, they became the propagators of this idea. Went back to their home and told their parents about it. So it was amazing to see how it's actually expanding. But at Google, we care about scale. It's not about one lesson plan. So we built 600 lesson plans. And we took it across the world, and over 2 million kids have actually experienced Expedition. This is insane. Just in UK, 1 out of every 8 students from primary and secondary school have actually experienced Expedition. So it has been super popular in schools in the last 1.5 years. The responses that we're getting from teachers and students is phenomenal. Kids are more attentive in the class, they're more engaged, and they have more questions, they share more. We realize that these experiences are not just for kids. So I don't know if you know about COPA 21. You might know it like the Paris Climate Accord. So we actually took it over there and showed the same lesson plan to 80 scientists. Now, all these scientists over there, they know climate change. That's why they're there. But just being there together and viewing this experience together, and when they kind of put the headset down and look each other into their eyes, they're like, oh shit, we need to fix this. So we are seeing that this kind of experience is actually scaling across different kind of users and their needs. But at Google, we feel that, especially for this use case, VR is about taking you to different places. AR is about bringing things to you. So in that case, it could be a VR lesson plan which talks about the lunar landing. In this case, you can actually have the lunar rover in the classroom where students can experience. So we actually made the product. So earlier this year, we actually launched and announced this product. This is a video for the Expedition AR experience.
All right, who wants to see a volcano? 3, 2, 1. Wow! Look at that lava, look at that smoke coming out of that.
Pretend you're an airplane and fly over the tornado.
That's the top of it. What do you see?
It's either asteroids, meteorites.
We're learning about DNA and genes, things that we can't see. And so the most exciting thing for me with the AR technology was that I could see kids get an aha moment that I couldn't get by just telling them about it.
The minute I saw it pop up on the screen, it made me want to get up and walk to it.
We actually get to turn around and look at things from all angles, so it gave us a nice perspective.
See if you can figure out what that might be based on what you know about the respiratory system.
I got to see where the alveoli branched off, and I could look inside them and see how everything worked, which I never saw before, and it was really, really cool.
Now it's our opportunity kind of to scale Expedition AR. So towards the end of this year, we are starting a roadshow, which is going to be, again, make this experience available to more than 1 million students. And actually today we launched a self-guided expedition mode. So if any one of you has a Daydream-ready phone, you can install it and you can run these experiences on your own phone. Lastly, education is not just about flying around different spaces and bringing virtual elements in, but it's also about touching on and discussing and exposing ourselves to very sensitive topics. And we started doing a bit of it in Expedition. But I feel many of you are movie makers over here, and you might feel passionate about this. So I do want to kind of plug a little bit. So if you have not used Jump, or if you don't know about it, please go and read up about it. So these are the camera rigs that Google has built. They capture stereoscopic videos. That one is the new one. It's called Halo. And we have a really cool program. It's called Jump Start, which is opening up in August, which you can sign up for. What it does, it gives you all the hardware and the software resources that you can use to build movies. I do want to kind of bring your focus on this is how the phones evolved over 20 years. I feel AR and VR are somewhere over there. If you remember those bulky Motorola phones, it's still a long time to when we get to that iPhone 2007 launch. So there's so much ground to cover. And with this passionate group and many other groups like these, I feel we're heading in the right direction. And thank you so much. This is a prototype of the carbon model that I showed earlier that we made.
Great. Our last presentation is by Winslow Turner Porter III. And yes, that's real. I did not make that up. And yes, so Winslow Turner Porter III is a Brooklyn-based director, producer, and creative technologist specializing in virtual reality and large-scale immersive installations. He started out as a feature film editor, pivoted into interactive music for modern dance and art and tech after graduating from NYU's Tish's Interactive Telecommunications Program, also known as ITP. With over 6 years of experiential work, he's helped create interactive experiences for Google, Delta, Diesel, Wired, and the Tribeca Film Festival's Transmedia Award-winning documentary Clouds. In 2016, Winslow formed a studio. It's called New Reality Company with Melissa Zek, creating the mixed reality works Giant and Tree. He and she are both named designers in residence at the BMW's new creative center in Greenpoint. And they were also just named Adweek's Top 100 Creatives as digital innovators. So Winslow Turner Porter III, please. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Winslow Turner Porter III. You can thank Winslow Turner Porter Jr. For that name. There might be a fourth, who knows. So also just getting, thank you Google for having us here. This is really a great opportunity, especially Neuhaus. Speaking of Google, I have a bone to pick with you because Clouds Over Sidra. Daniel mentioned Clouds. It was a documentary that I produced. And so if you used to type in Clouds VR, this documentary Clouds would come up. And then you type in Clouds VR right when Clouds Over Sidra came out, we were like buried in the SEO. So yeah, I think we talked about it the first time I met you too. So I just wanted to just clear the air about that. I think that's all I got for the preamble here. So yeah, New Reality Company. That's a company that Milica Zetz and I started. So I'll give the shout outs too, just to get out of the way. Milica here is the co-founder, creative partner, amazing human being. We also have the folks from Converge here who did amazing work to help us create Tree. And we also have Devin, who's a part of the New Reality team, as well as Riley, who is a very new hire for us. So I'm here to talk about two projects, Giant and also Tree. But to start things off, Giant was a project that we started about 2 years ago. We saw what was going on in VR. I have previous experience working for agencies doing stuff 360 video, also game engine. And we wanted to be able to, similar to Gabo's piece, where not just be able to sort of be headlocked inside of a video sphere, but be able to immerse you inside an environment. And this specific environment was inspired. No client here was inspired by Milica's upbringing in Serbia during the NATO bombings. So we wanted to be able to have you witness what it's like to be with a family during their last moments. But we also wanted to flip the script in the sense of not just thinking of this being a conflict that's far away somewhere, but imagining what it would be like if this were to happen to a Western audience, if this were to happen, say, in New York or Los Angeles. And just like the family, you don't know what's happening, so we get to sort of witness the game that the parents are playing with the daughter as they are finding out that that this might be their last moment with their child. And it was really important for us to be able to create this as a seated experience, but you could also, move around. You could theoretically get up and walk around the room. We use a technique called depth kit, so we're actually using semi-volumetric video, so it's not just a card in space. And that was a really difficult pipeline for us to develop, but it was really worth it at the end because, we, along with the technology that we brought when we premiered at Sundance, we also had to supply a lot of tissues. There were a lot of hugs, and the outpouring of emotion that we experienced was really inspiring for us to be able to continue working on projects, but also to be able to think about how we're going to be telling the story. And also, just to get a little bit into the production aspects of it, I was talking about how the visual is very important, but oftentimes the unsung hero of VR is the audio. And something that's new with VR is, generally just like in this room right here, these speakers are anywhere from 5 to, say, 15 feet away from you. And it's not really it's not as intimate as sound can be, but when most people in VR are actually viewing it with headphones. And so there's a lot more subtleties in the audio that we can provide. Sound design is there's all sorts of new opportunities that we're seeing with sound design. This is the Unreal Engine that we use for most of our experiences. So we're actually able to play sound and have sound travel through, and you're actually able to convey whispers a lot more effectively because, yeah, you're so close to the person's ear, and then we're able to have more intimacy when it comes to storytelling. And another quick thing about the audio, too, is that normally we're used to experiencing audio on one plane, but now with VR, we can actually position audio above and below you. So there's a lot of ways that as directors we can, we have to relinquish control at a certain point because we can't say, hey, look at that, or you're doing this wrong, but we can be helping direct their attention using audio. And so this is an important thing to consider too. The user, is paramount when it comes to VR. If you want to think that you can, as I said before, you can guide them, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink in a sense. But we want to be able to have it so that whatever they do is correct, and you have to really think about the user. So there's also sort of a theater of VR when we think about it. We want to be able to create an immersive experience before they even put the headset on. So for us, it's important to be considering all these different aspects of how they're going to be in the room, and also how many people we can put in there, but also be able to have it so they're in a room where they can be able to, you're onboarding them to a rather intense experience. You want, after they're done, just like if you were to wake someone from a dream, you don't want to startle them. You don't want to just pull the headset off and say, next. You want to let them sit with what they've experienced. And that's very important for us as storytellers, to be able to think about how you're onboarding and offboarding them. So here you can see, this is when we premiered at Sundance. We were able to also provide, make it contextual, because if people are in the headset and their friend wants to take a picture of them too, you have no idea what they're looking at. So we wanted to be able to make it so that you have an idea what they're looking at in the headset. But also, as I said before, you're experiencing these bomb blasts with the family for the first time, and we want to surprise you. So we actually we have a butt kicker, which is basically from the video game community has been using these for years, but now we're actually seeing that these are incredibly effective tools to immerse the audience. So we don't tell them about it, but just like the family, they are startled, they're surprised, they're able to actually experience these vibrations, these approaching bomb blasts, just like the family. And anytime you can have any type of physical embodiment of something happening in the virtual world, you're going to be able to immerse your audience a lot more and be able to get more impact from them, more of an emotional response. So this brings us to Tree. After touring with Giant, we refer to ourselves as kind of like a circus, or like a group of, basically like a rock band that plays the same song to 3 people every 10 minutes. It's very different than making a film and locking picture and being done with it and sitting down and relaxing. Every time we bring people through, we're actually able to, see what works, what doesn't, and actually, iterate on the user experience with every time we show it. So the version of Tree that we have right now is about 2.5, but we're planning on making version 3.0, and so that when we actually ship it, we've had so much amazing feedback, so we can continue to improve the experience. But eventually we have to sort of let it go. If you love something, set it free. So we premiered with also, I forgot. Jess was also a co-producer on Giant too. I need to give all the shout outs here. So yeah, we also, an insane deadline. We made this version of Tree that we premiered at Sundance in about 2 months, which is not, it's not healthy, but we did it. and we also, experienced very similar emotions from people. Because in this experience, we wanted to be able to imagine, whenever you make VR, you should think, the first question you should ask yourself is this the best tool to tell the story? Not just, is this something that is very hype-worthy and is going to get some press because we're doing something cool inside the headset and people love VR and AR and MR and XR and all sorts of Rs you can throw around. No, don't think about that. Think about, is this the best tool? And yes, for us with Tree, how can you imagine what it's like to become a tree from seed, to be growing up through the soil, to become a full-size kapok tree? So we work closely with the Rainforest Alliance to be able to understand and to be able to paint this. This is all inside Unreal, by the way, working with our art director, Jacob Kudsteensen. So we wanted to be able to create a photorealistic environment, and that was no small task. So we also, one thing that VR can afford is the first-person perspective. So here we go back here. So this is actually, another still from the game engine, and you guys will be able to experience it over here. It's very important to think about, what can it afford? And one of those things is a perspective shift. You can see as many documentaries as you want, about climate change, but as soon as you are in the actual shoes of nature, it has a profound impact on how you think about it. It recontextualizes a lot of what you think about nature, about yourself, about, the future, ultimately, of this planet. So for us, it was important as filmmakers we actually created a trilogy. It was Militsa's brilliant idea for, with Giants, we wanted to be able to think about the harm that human beings are doing to each other. With Tree, we wanted to think about the harm we're doing to Mother Nature. And we actually have a third project called Breathe, which we're in pre-production now, which offers, a glimpse of hope and understanding, too, about the collaborative, the only way that we're actually going to be able to help each other is by working together. So we can talk about that project afterwards. I got 2 minutes. Again, as I said, the user is paramount. So when we're thinking about experiences, we want to be able to plan out the beginning that the first thing they do when they see the experience, but also when they're outside the headset. And it's important for us to be able to give them something also as a takeaway. But for us, we're very big fans of multi-sensory experiences because we're able to tap into things that as soon as we can trigger other senses, then we're able to immerse you even further. So we use butt kickers in the floor, similar to what we had with Giant, but we also use a sub-pack vest. We use a heater to be able to simulate what happens in the end. No spoilers. We use wind so you can feel what it's like to be able to be the tallest tree in the rainforest. But we also worked with international flavors and fragrances to be able to create 3 custom scent tracks. So you feel what it's like to be underground, this really amazing, earthy, peaty smell. And then when you break through, you smell sort of the majesty of nature with this like fresh cut flower and grass smell. And then we have a final smell, which you'll be able to experience next door. Again, no spoilers. So this is actually Jenny Slate. You can see by her, her face, just, how impactful the experience can be. And this is her after we took the headset off. And also, for us, as I was saying, the theater of VR is very important. How you dress things, a lot of care. Disney's been doing this for years. You don't just want to be able to give someone a headset and be like, you figure it out. You want to be able to lead them into the experience and really be able to, we've been telling stories for years in theater, immersive theater, and so we should be taking those learnings and also be applying them to our experiences. And that's something that's very important for us at New Reality Company. And here's also, similar set dressing to what we have next door, and it will increase the impact of the experience profoundly. So also one more thing that we do is be able to, not just make them feel helpless at the end, but being able to give them a takeaway at the end, the actual rainforest seed that they were inside the headset, the kapok tree. We give them the seed back inside an envelope, also with a web page, so that they can learn more about the complexities of climate change. So we can actually give them the knowledge to be able to, to empower themselves, but also to teach others about it as well. That's extremely important. And our next piece, as I said, it's called Breathe. We'd love to talk to you guys about it after this as well. So thank you very much.